So good evening. My name is Don Ficken. I'm with the Library Telescope Program, and we're happy to once again bring you another chapter of one of our number of videos. This is actually video number 47. And this one will cover something that's kind of a new thing for us. It's about how to launch your own library telescope program, but it's got a twist. We actually have today telescopes that are already modified so that you don't have to do all the changes that you may have seen if you've been searching on the internet. Typically, we take a telescope and make a lot of modifications to get it ready for the telescope. So now you can actually purchase the telescope ready to go. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight is how to launch your program with this new twist. So if you're not familiar with the Library Telescope Program, we've been around since 2008. We are actually in multiple countries right now. We actually have a world map you can see right here. It's kind of cool. Of course, the USA is very prominent. We have 48 states. We have a number of provinces in Canada, and we're making our way into Europe. We've got Switzerland just recently joined, and the Netherlands have been around a while, and we relatively recently just had South Korea join. So we're very happy to have participation across the world of this really terrific program. So the concept, by the way, of the Library Telescope Program is you can simply check out a telescope from a library, just like a book. And it's such a great idea that just last year, October 2024, we decided to make a legal entity, a nonprofit, a 501c3, with the idea that we're going to try to grow this program and share best practices. So we have a lot of resources. If you check out our website, we have a lot of how-to resources. We have a very good Facebook guy that's got us up to like 7,000 followers. He's always putting cool astronomy stuff out there. And we encourage you to sign up on our email system to get alerts about kind of the big stuff that's happening these days in our program. So today we have ready to go telescopes available from High Point Scientific. I'll talk about that briefly as we come up. In the future, we have a number of how-to videos that we've contracted that will be done soon. We're working on creating ambassadors, and an ambassador is nothing more than somebody that's gone through some training and they can work with a library to basically do a good job so they make sure they have a good, consistent program and good support. And we hope you'll, maybe if you're an amateur astronomer, consider getting involved in that. It's not on our website yet, but we are working on it, and we hope to have that ready for enrollment by June. We're looking for grant programs for libraries to help seed and get them kind of going if they've never been in the program before. And, always it's really cool to have themed events. In other words, there's always Astronomy Day, International Observe the Moon Night. So we're going to try to give the libraries more than simply a piece of equipment to go out and have fun with, which is great, but it's a lot more fun to have some more stuff to do with it as a library. If you haven't checked out our front page of our website, we have one of our members is with the Astronomical League, and he does a terrific job of making monthly sky charts, which we'd love to share. He has them in both in English and Spanish. This is an example from the February night sky. You can see that it's not particularly overly complicated, so that's really good. It means that basically, if you want to just look at a few things with a library telescope or even your binoculars, you can find some things right here. And it's all free to download. You can just download those. And usually he'll have an event or two of the month that's kind of cool. He'll draw a special map around that. And I think you'll enjoy those if you download those. So I did mention that this is our 47th video. And so we've been doing this for a couple of years. These videos are very short. These little webinars are very short. Sometimes we'll have guest speakers. Sometimes we'll talk about, well, like last month, we talked about 2025's most fascinating events to see with the help of the Library Telescope. And so if you can watch that and you can go out and kind of time things throughout the year, there's observing tips. There's how a library might start a program, everything from lunar eclipses to pocket planetarium. So you can just visit the front page and just click on one of the videos that'll play at YouTube. It's a great way to learn about the program and just learn about astronomy in general. So let's get started with our program tonight. So this is, as I said before, is we have a new twist. We have a telescope that's ready to go. And what I want to talk about is kind of talk about things I've talked about before, but with this whole new concept in mind. And we're going to start with the program launch. We're going to talk about the ambassadors, in other words, trying to get some help from a local astronomy club and how to fund and purchase the telescope, about policies and procedures if you're a librarian to think about, your staff, your marketing kind of thing. And once you get the program going, you don't want to forget to keep your program healthy. In other words, you have to promote your program. You have to make sure your staff stay up to speed on how things work, on their check-in procedures, and wait lists become a big deal after a while. And then also just to keep your equipment healthy. All right, so let's begin with the program launch. First off, the best I can do today with just a short time is go through a few things, okay? But if you go to our librarytelescope.org website, go to the program administration area. This is a screenshot right here of a few of the pages from that. It'll go down through funding and purchase and the policies and procedures. You can do downloads of documents and things like that. There's a QR code right here. If you happen to want to freeze this after later, if it's been playing, you can just go right straight to this. But the point is, we're giving you some help right off the bat. And a new thing that we're adding, this is very cool, by the way, is that you can email us at programlaunch@librarytelescope.org, and there'll be a real person that'll be looking for that email and they'll respond back to you. So sometimes it's good not just to read stuff, but actually have a person that you can talk to and ask good questions. So questions, we have a lot of questions over time. I know when we started our program here in St. Louis, we worked with, I think, something 40 different libraries. There were lots of questions, and that's normal and that's to be expected. But the good news for you is we've had this program for a while. We've probably encountered your questions several times already, and so we're happy to really help you with that. All right, so let's begin with find an ambassador. And this is one of our task force members with the library, by the way. And one of your best ambassadors would be to find someone from an astronomy club. In other words, and sometimes you may not have an astronomy club in the area, but let's presume for a moment that you do. Astronomers love to help. They love to tinker with equipment. They love to talk about astronomy. And all you have to do is go to our website and pick the page where it says find an astronomy club. Just go under the administration area and say find an astronomy club, and we'll give you some links to get started. Now, it may not be in your town that you have an astronomer, but guess what? You got science teachers. Sometimes you have people that just love telescopes or Rotary Club people that are enthusiastic. The really good thing about the library telescope program is this telescope is not complicated. Okay, so I'll give you a testimony directly that I've seen 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds operate this thing in a matter of a couple, 3 minutes. So it's not difficult to operate, and there's a little bit of maintenance that have to be done, but we can help your astronomer or ambassador, your science teacher. We can help coach them through whatever's coming up. And very soon, we're going to have a number of modules or courses that'll actually take them very methodically through how to start a program, how to do star parties, and all that kind of stuff. Now, the old model, this is, if you start searching the internet, this is what you're going to find. We had an Orion Star Blast, which was there since the beginning, really, of when this program started in 2008. And what the people, they're very clever people, they figured out very quickly that if you have an eyepiece in there and it could come out, somebody's going to lose it. So what they did is they strapped in an eyepiece. They actually bolted in one eyepiece that you couldn't take out. They said, okay, you'll lose the lens caps. We'll put ropes on those. You'll have other things that go wrong. So we're going to put labels and camera bags with all kinds of cool stuff. And that actually scared some people away. Let's say you're an astronomer or maybe you're a science teacher. You don't really know how to do some of these things. And so I think that was a barrier for some people to get some libraries to get involved with it. At the end of the day, they said, it just looks a little bit too complicated for me to get involved. I'm a little bit scared about that. Well, the good news is that you don't have to do that anymore. Okay, so today, you can actually, on the left-hand side here, we have this telescope, which is now sold by High Point Scientific. You can buy that ready to go. It's got the labels on it. There's a few things missing that I'll talk about in just a moment, but pretty much for about $320 right now, US dollars, you can get that thing free shipped to you in continental USA, and all you do is put a barcode on it, and it's ready to go. Now, we're not saying this is the only telescope there's out there. There's a lot of great telescopes, and we're not necessarily saying one telescope over another. A lot of people have other preferences. We support all of those. We love telescopes and libraries. This happens to be one choice, but there are telescopes available right now. I suggest that you go out to High Point Scientific and just type in library telescope, and you'll be able to pull up a wonderful choice there and get them. They've got a little bit. They got some stock available right now, so if you can get these shipped to you pretty quickly. So in short, you just order this thing. In a few weeks, you'll have this thing in your library, and you can start looking at the stars. How about that? Now, the way that the High Point Scientific program, this is a little bit of an inner solution until we get another telescope built down the road, but this one works great, by the way. We have some of these. You need to probably buy a couple things, a little Audubon guide for constellations. And it doesn't have to be that particular guide, but it's good enough. And then we've actually created a little user manual that goes right into what's called a camera bag, and it's like a user guide that tells you how to use the telescope. It's very small. It's actually bigger on this screen than it actually is. It's just not much bigger than index cards, and it's got a laminated thing if you get it done right at the at a print shop or something else. But you just download this a PDF of this, take it to a print shop, have them print it, and go crazy with it. So that's really all you got to do. And even these, you don't really have to do at the end of the day. You just need really the telescope to make it work. Now you'll probably, once you get it, the one thing you will have to do obviously is add your barcode to it. And I will say that a lot of the libraries, it depends on your library, they will add a barcode to the body of the telescope, but also to the books and things like that, because you want to account for all the little things that are going into what's called a camera bag. So they'll do that. So you may do several different barcode types of things, but at the end of the day, not much work to do really at the end of the day to make that thing happen. Now, a lot of people say, well, gee whiz, how do I pay for that thing? So I've worked with, in the St. Louis area, probably 40 different libraries. Some have done just, they had like a friend in the library says, here's my credit card, just go buy it. It's cheap enough. Sometimes they actually do book sales. We have some people, I think in Omaha, they just did a big grant program. I think Delaware did too. And then there's sometimes you just have enough funds. So $350 anymore, $320, whatever it is really not that much if you really just want to taste this thing and see how it works. So for the most part, for the High Point Scientific option, you're talking $320 plus maybe an Audubon guide and maybe a little the other kind of the user guide that we printed. So then you can just go get that printed, or you could even do that in your library if you have the ability to print stuff and laminate it or whatever else. So it's not a really hard way to get started. That telescope you're looking at right there, we've had that particular model for a long time. It's just that we had to go through and do all the changes, and now it's ready to go. So what a great choice for that is. So some things, if you're a librarian, that you'll be needing to think about. I thought this was really interesting when I started. The first question is, do you put this in your adult or youth department? I will tell you, it seems like it's both ways. We have one big library here in St. Louis that right straight to the adult. The other one said, nope, it's a youth department. But at the end of the day, what happens is you typically will have a checkout policy that they have to be over 18 and it's going to be a family using this thing. We really encourage adult supervision on this. So it's really your choice. It really comes probably down to your staffing and how your internal stuff works out. Some other procedures you'll need to think about is what is your lending period? So when we started here in our St. Louis market, we did a week, and now I think it's up to 3 weeks. That'll somewhat depend on how popular it is. They did a week right off the bat because they wanted to make sure that they didn't have too big of a wait list. And even now, by the way, we're still in one library. I think there's, even in dead winter, I think it's 80 people waiting on the wait list right now. We've been up to 300. In fact, when we first started, it was up to almost a year and a half. So then they had to obviously add a bunch of telescopes on to make that work, right? So a lending period will become a choice, and it's not necessarily one's right decision over you. It's over another. You just have to decide for your market what really works best for you. What a lot of them have simply settled down to says, look, it's a library of things. Whatever our books are, that's the length that's going to be for the telescope. They make it simple so everybody understands, hey, if it's 3 weeks for your books, it's going to be 3 weeks for the library telescope. That's your choice. So check-in and check-out procedures. They're a little bit different for a library telescope than, say, a book, because you get a book in, you're basically just scanning the barcode and putting it in for the pending thing to get rebooked back into your library. But for the check-out and check-in procedures for a library telescope, if you're checking one out, you want to make sure that all the parts are there so that if they come back and something's missing, right, then you knew it at least left there. And then make sure that the battery's working on the red dot finder. It's a little thing that you use to find a star, maybe line up stars in the sky. And when you check it back in, you just want to make sure it's in good shape, that basically things are there as you're expecting. So it takes a little bit more work to do a check-in and check-out procedure. But most importantly is that most of the libraries that are new to library of things have to think a little differently, because this is a bigger item. It's a little bit more complicated. So we actually have check-in and check-out procedure examples in our administration area. So I encourage you to check that out, literally, pun intended, so that you can understand how the different options are. Age requirement, typically they really want an adult because it looks like it's a toy, but it's really not a toy. It's a very powerful telescope. One of the most common questions we get, and we get sometimes really arguments over this, case or no case? Well, we strongly suggest no case. And the reason we say that is because this telescope is kind of outfitted, everything's kind of sticking in and out, and no case was really built for that. So you have eyepieces sticking out, red dot finders put on there. And most of the time, the cases are made to have all that stuff come off and it nicely fits in there. But when you have everything sticking out, what happens, you really have to make sure that it's in there properly. So we've actually seen more damage with a case than not having a case. And so sometimes you just have to kind of just trust us on that. But anyway, that's what we suggest. So some libraries, particularly I know where we started, we had a damage recovery policy. In other words, if someone checked it out and they broke it, they send it back, then we're gonna charge them for their damage. That'll vary by library. I think we've gotten a lot more thoughtful about that. We don't really do too much. The truth is that most people are pretty darn careful with it. In fact, I will say in some of the underserved areas, we actually found that some people would not check it out by worry that they would damage it somehow. So it's actually kind of the other way. We've had damage. Obviously, people come back. That's just the nature of patrons and the public. But you have to decide what your damage recovers. Some people from some libraries from the beginning said, look, you owe us this much money to replace the telescope if it's broken beyond repair. But for the most part, what I've seen in the markets is that it's a simple telescope and just about everything can be repaired. I don't think we've ever had a telescope damaged beyond where we couldn't repair. Sometimes we had to get a woodworker to fix something to put like part of the base in there, but for the most part, it can, now occasionally a telescope won't come back and that's just the nature of it. And so that's just the way things sometimes work. But we haven't actually had too many of those. If you're a large library, something that you'll have to think about, this is one of the little twisting policies that we've struggled with here, is when we started it, let's say you have 20 branches, you had to go to a branch and check out a telescope, and it had to be at that branch. Okay. In other words, they wouldn't transfer like a book from another branch to you. You had to go to that branch, check out the telescope, and return it back to that branch. So every branch has, let's say, 2 or 3 telescopes. And if they happen to be out completely and another branch had it, you had to go to that branch to get it. But the new policy is, at least with the libraries, one of the libraries I work with, is they will transfer that telescope from one branch to the other, which in turn cause some issues because sometimes, I hate to say it, but the folks get really busy and they kind of just throw it there like a piece of luggage, and that can cause damage too. So we've actually had to get into situations where we put them in tubs and make sure they're really safe. So that's something to think about. Inter-branch transfers, that's kind of a big deal. The other side of it is, do you want to have require patrons to have training before you have them check it out? We don't really require that. I haven't seen too much of that. What we do like to do is star parties and to show them how it works, but it's not really a requirement. So it's really up to you. Certainly they would have more probably success at using the telescope if they had a little bit upfront training, but that's what a good star party will do. But I will say that person after person, if you get them just a little help, usually within 2 to 3 minutes, you've got an 8-year-old operating that, and probably in 5, they'll be showing their mom and dad how to use it. So that's really cool. All right, so not to be forgotten. So when I first did this, I was kind of taken aback. In fact, the executive director didn't really want to touch the telescope until we almost made her. We had her pick it up, and then we had her point. The telescope is daytime, and some leaves and things like that across the parking lot. And she said, oh, that's really cool. But a lot of times, if you don't have your staff touch it and just kind of work with it a little bit, a patron comes in, they say, I want to check out a telescope, and they'll go get it and say, I don't know anything about this. And they look like they just don't want to touch it, and they give it to you. That's not pretty good tone just to get started with. But if your library staff have had a chance to use it to go look at the stars or look at books or whatever else inside, and they feel like, oh, this is really easy, that's going to come across in a way that you will really support your program. So don't underestimate the importance of getting your staff ready for it. And sometimes for me, when I do my staff training for the libraries that I work with, I'll bring in the staff and spend only 3 or 4 or 5 minutes with them. If they can pick it up, focus on something on the wall, and just see how simple it is, suddenly that fear is just simply gone away. And of course, there's always staff training days, which you can have a lot more fun, or maybe even a stargazing night for just your library staff. They'll have a blast with that. All right, so then the last thing is to promote your program. First thing I would do is really make sure that you register your program with us. We do have a world map, and we've got a lot of locations. You literally can go to our world map, click on your state or province or country, and drill down to where it lists the known library locations. And when we say location, it's like an outlet. A library with 20 branches, in our definition, would be 20 locations, because we want to know where that person could go get that telescope. And of course, you guys already know what to do with social media, with press releases. What you may forget about sometimes is putting a sign in the library, or if it's not being checked out, that telescope, to put it towards visible. What I've too often seen is I'll walk in the library, I'll go to the back room, and there's a telescope. It's all hidden, and people have no idea that this is a telescope. But one of the most popular things that will help your library is what's called a star party. And it's nothing more than taking the telescopes outside and just having a blast with them, looking at the moon or the Saturn or Jupiter or some stars, or even having some special themed events. And what I like to do is, there are certainly a lot of ways to go about that. Some of the astronomers love to go literally take everybody to the darkest place they can find, and that's great. You can see obviously a little bit more in dark spots, but my goal is simply to teach people how to use it. They'll take it home and do what they want. So what I like to do is I like to do a 90-minute program where half that time is inside. I mean, literally, where if it rains, shines, I can still hold the program. I can explain how astronomy works. I can show people how to use a telescope, even if it's just at a moon on the wall or a picture or something like that, or a book. And then the last part, if the weather's good, I'll take them outside and let them apply their skills. Now, I like to make sure the moon's always visible. And if you do this right, let's say a couple days after new moon, all the way up through full moon, you're going to find the moon is up even before the sun is set. Okay. And so even if you have to start the program early and you put them outside, you can have a blast with this, because if they can find that moon, you have proven they can obviously use that telescope, and that's all you really need to do. Now, if you go to our front page of our website and go to video number 44, we have an entire video about hosting a library star party, and I encourage you to check that out. Okay. Keeping your program healthy. Don't forget that signage. Don't forget your social media. And for heaven's sakes, have some regular events with this. Just have some star parties or something like that that brings this to attention. People love those star parties. They bring their families. I've seen 4-year-olds. I've seen adults, grandmas, grandpas, everybody you could think of. They love to get outside at night. And astronomers, if you get an astronomer, ambassador, whatever else, they'll love to show you things in the night sky. That's really terrific. The star parties, the best ones are really, I think, are seeing the most popular ones is whenever there's a major media event of some sort, an astronomy event that's been promoted in the media. It might be the Perseus showers, it might be a supermoon, it could be crazy things like that. The public will watch that stuff, and they'll see star party, and they'll show up in your library, and that's really what you're all about. And of course, you can always do summer reading programs. Even though you may not be able to do summer reading program at night, I've done literally telescopes inside of a room somewhere, and I'll put stuff up on the wall and teach them how to operate this. The kids love it, by the way, because it turns out that these telescopes, the reflectors, right? They have a mirror, and that means everything's upside down. So they'll have all kinds of giggling and some fun with that. But it does teach them how to use the telescope, and it does teach them about astronomy. You can throw astronomy books around there, and you can have a really lot of fun with that. Okay, so this is just the nature of the time. I find that I train staff. 6 months later, the director's gone, staff's changed. You got to have staff training again. And even though you maybe train the staff, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's a half hour, maybe it's a star party, they're going to forget it. So you really want them to kind of stay up on this and be excited about this the whole time. At least the library staff that I've dealt with, they really enjoy the program. By the way, this is Netherlands right here. So I can show you that they're actually having some fun with this. They really love the program, and they just love getting outside, and they love the moon. They love Jupiter and Saturn, and look at some stars. They're just as much kids as everybody else, right? We're just having a good time with it. And the wait list. So this is the one thing that I didn't quite understand when I first started. Like, what's a wait list? So what happens if you have like 5 telescopes? You could have 30 people waiting to check it out. So if you got a 2 or 3 week checkout period, so it could take a while. So when we first started right here where I live in St. Louis, we had, my gosh, I think it was literally over a year and a half. But the people, it turned out, I was worried that they were going to be very upset about that, but they weren't. They said, that's okay. It just shows me the program's popular. And pretty soon, one day they get a call and it's available to check out. So you need to watch your wait list. If your wait list gets up, particularly during the spring and fall, that might mean that you need to get another telescope. And the one thing that I think a lot about as a supporter and ambassador is making sure that those telescopes are in service all the time. I don't want a telescope sitting 5 weeks out, waiting for someone to repair it. So I try to get repairs done quickly. It's very common, by the way, if you want to do a star party. This is just librarians, right? They want to make sure they got their telescope. So they'll take it out of service 4 weeks or 3 weeks before the actual star party, because they want to use that telescope in their star party, right? Now you managed to mess up your wait list a little bit. So make sure that you have enough telescopes. They're not really particularly that expensive. I know $320 is a lot, but I will say that we're in the program 10 years here in St. Louis, and I'm getting our first telescope that was ever put in the entire world in New Hampshire. They're getting me a photo of that for an article that we're doing. So that telescope is still in operation, if you can believe that or not. So you're going to probably get a pretty good return on your library investment dollars if you get into this program and if you promote it right and you just do the right things. It is very popular. Astronomy's been growing a lot in clubs that I talk to. All right, so there are problems, things happen with telescopes. Dead batteries is probably the most common ones. Librarians just forget to check it. In fact, sometimes they'll forget it so long the batteries will literally corrode in the actual telescope itself. Now, the new telescope has a 2032 battery. It looks like a little nickel. It's not going to corrode, but you still need to replace the battery. They're not expensive. Sometimes the little sight, think about it like a gun sight. If that thing's not lined up to where you need to see when you look through the telescope, it's pointed somewhere else. You're trying to line, it's just not lined up and you're not going to find the object very easily. So astronomers can help you figure out how to get that line back up. It's really pretty simple to do. But I have a big telescope, and if my finder's not properly aligned, I can't even find the moon. You would think I could, but you got to remember that with a telescope, you're magnifying significantly. It's like looking through a straw. And it might seem like you should be able to put your telescope on something, but that finder really helps to get things done. Sometimes the little eyepieces, just by the mere fact that people are using this a lot of times, will get loose. We might have missing items in the camera bag. I didn't put this on there, but sometimes people will drop them. We've actually had the peg leg fall off. We have to kind of take it off and screw it back on, or maybe even replace a piece of the wood. So there are things that go wrong with it. For the most part, it's a very simple telescope. There's no electronics except the actual red dot finder, and that's nothing more than a 2032 battery. And that means that you don't have to worry about plugging it in, recharging things for the most part. It just pretty much works. So, all right. So that wraps up really the two parts that I want to talk about tonight, which is the program launch and keeping your program healthy. And so if there are any questions, I will try to take those in the chats here. And if we have any questions we're actually on live streaming on Zoom here. I'll take those as well. So if you've got any questions, please let me know. Looks like we have somebody says, Kayla, thank you very much. Excellent information. Thanks for sharing your ideas. If you have any questions, just let me know. It sounds like I'm the most experienced guy here, but I'm not. There's really some smart people out here in our library telescope task force. We have maybe 40 or 50 organizations that support this. We get together every month and we go through how to do things, fix things, whatever else. They just love to tinker. That's astronomer for you, right? So, but anyway, we're here to help you. That's really our job, is our passion to get you involved in astronomy. And we encourage you to get involved if you can. So if you have a question about your launching a telescope program, I don't care if you're in the Netherlands, if you're in Canada, or if you're in USA or Asia or Australia for that matter, just email us at programlaunch@librarytelescope.org. We have people all over the place. We can get on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever else and help you through some things. We're happy to do that, and we'll just share our passion. I think that if you get in the program, you're going to find that it's really, really, very a lot of fun, and your patrons will love it. And like I say, it seems like the library telescopes have been lasting pretty well. And I think with our new system, our new twist, if you will, having a telescope ready to go, you just order it, ship it to you. What a great success that is. So anyway, that's really what I have there. See if we have any questions here. All right. Well, thank you, by the way, for everybody for joining. So I am going to, this is our typical thing. It'll probably be tomorrow sometime afternoon. I'll get this rendered and put it out onto our front page of our library telescope or website. And you'll be able to just watch that and share that with the folks that you need to. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions right now. I probably did just such a good job that people don't really have. So anyway, I encourage you to reach out to us. Once again, it's a great program. Go to High Point Scientific. Just type in library telescope and you'll be able to see it. I think you have to fill out a form right now. They're worried. They have some just interim stock, so they want to make sure they're shipping mostly to libraries. But we're going to have some great things coming up very soon. Glad to be part of the 501c3 to make this really happen. So, and we appreciate everybody that's been involved with this. There's been so many people across the world. it really is fun to hear people in Europe and different countries. It's like, wow, this one's South Korea. Wonder what they're doing. Now, sometimes, by the way, they don't have the telescopes like that we're dealing with High Point Scientific. Sometimes they can't get them there for some reason. I think High Point Scientific might be able to, but sometimes it's the Bresser in Europe. Sometimes it's another telescope. We're fine with all of that. It's just that we've learned over time, certain telescopes tend to hold up a little better. They're a little easier to use. But if you're hand holding them or you're working with them, hey, we just love success. That's really what we're all after. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up tonight. I appreciate once again, and I haven't really figured out the next month's thing that's coming up as far as our program, but it might be around, we'll figure that out. So anyway, have a great evening, and thank you once again for joining.